Well, first you make sure that the vaccine is safe, that it's not causing any side effects that might be dangerous to humans. And then you study it for its effectiveness. So the study would probably be a study where hospital workers or those volunteers who carry dead bodies or people who transport patients to hospitals would be vaccinated, but in a study which some would be vaccinated and some wouldn't be.
What is the process that they will be going through? Can you talk us through that?
Well, what would happen would be that volunteers would be solicited to enroll in a clinical trial for a vaccine to prove whether or not it's effective. Those volunteers would be divided randomly into two groups, one that receives the vaccine, one that receives an injection which is not the vaccine. But they would both be vaccinated with some product or other. The other product, of course, would be safe. It's called a placebo. And they would all be told that this vaccine is experimental and that no matter who has it, everybody must protect themselves just as they would if they didn't have a vaccine, because it's not known whether it's effective.
And that is key.
So it's a very difficult trial to accomplish. It will take a lot of people, and what eventually will be analyzed is whether or not those people who had the vaccine had fewer infections than those who didn't.
For those people who feel like a vaccine is just around the corner, and will be put out soon and can stop the Ebola epidemic, what do you say to them?
Well, the vaccine is now ready to study in humans. It's being studied for safety. Effectiveness studies will begin hopefully before the end of the year, but once the studies are done, it's just the beginning. After that, that vaccine must then be produced in quantities sufficient to vaccinate people at risk of Ebola. It must be then made available to countries. It will probably have to be stored cold so that it doesn't become inactivated in hot tropical climates. And then it will have to be given to people. And now people are not trusting health workers in many instances. So there will have to be trust in that vaccine as well. So it's not just enough to get an effective vaccine. Then there's a whole environment that must be created to make sure that that vaccine can be used properly in the people who need it.
What are we learning from those that have survived Ebola? We've just heard that one of the nurses that was infected has now been declared free of the virus. What are we learning from them?
Well, we're learning a lot from them because there will be a lot of studies to determine how immunity was developed in those people. In other words, how they were able to fight off the virus. But there are some studies that could be done now in developing countries, and that is to study whether or not the blood or the antibodies made by the survivors who have survived the disease could be used to treat people who have infection.
So the blood of an Ebola survivor may well be the key to figuring out a vaccine or a treatment ultimately.
Well, it may be the key to a treatment. And what WHO, the World Health Organization, has high on the agenda is studies to see whether plasma, which is the clear part of blood, which contains antibody, is effective in treating patients who have Ebola. In other words, will that neutralize the virus in people who are infected?